classic Mini. Should you buy one? Well, in this episode, I'll give you my reasons why I think you should. Hi and welcome to the channel, and welcome to this, our Christmas special. So in this video, we've decided to team up with Wull's Wheels. So a few videos ago, you'll have noticed that I posted up a video of Jake from Wull's Wheels doing a walk around of his Rover Mini City. So we got chatting, and a few months ago we decided that we would do this collaboration. So essentially what we're going to be doing is giving tips and advice on buying a classic Mini, modifications that you can do to them, even should you modify them at all, and just our thoughts on the cars. With Jake having the Mini Saloon, the later Mini Saloon, he decided that he would focus his video mainly on the saloon range, and with me having my likes tending to be more in the older style of Minis and the long wheelbase editions, that I would concentrate my video on these ones as well. So that's why I'm trying to avoid doubling up on information in some ways. Jake's video has just gone live the same time as this one, so when you finish watching my video, jump over to Jake's channel and you can check out his video on the Mini Saloon range. I'll actually put a link up here to Jake's channel, and there'll also be a link in the description below, and at the end of this video as well, I'll put another link on the screen here that you can jump over to his video. So yep, let's jump to it. So let's kick off with a very basic introduction just to the Mini in general. So Sir Alex Izagonis, the designer of the Mini, was given a brief to produce an economical family car which would beat the influx of bubble cars which are coming in from Europe as a result of the Suez oil crisis. So on the 26th of August 1959, the Mini was introduced to the public as the Austin 7, produced at Longbridge in Birmingham, and as the Morris Mini Minor, produced in Cowley and Oxford, as well as produced by a number of manufacturers across the world under license. So the Mini began life as the saloon model, and it was only differences between the two brands was colours, some badging and some minor trim levels. But basically all Minis were the same no matter what the manufacturer. So they continued right through until year 2000, with some varying changes on bodywork and so on as the years went on, and some other improvements. But I'm getting away from maybe this video a little bit, that Jake on his video on Wull's Wheels, he'll be concentrating on the saloons and giving a bit more information about the changes that the saloons made and so on, while I'll be looking mainly at the long wheelbase models. So yeah, we'll take a wee look at the history of them as well. So again, it'll be very basic as far as that's concerned. So the Mini van was first introduced in 1960, so only 1 year after the original Mini was launched. Now again, it came as an Austin and as a Morris, and again, as with the saloons, the only differences between the two brands was colours, availability, some badging, and again the trim levels. But on all minivans, all trim was basic. Passenger seats, sun visors and so on were actually optional extras, at least in many cases anyway. So the minivan, from the doors forward, is essentially the same as the Mini Saloon, except for the fact that the grille is a pressed out grille in the front panel, and it's solidly mounted, so no access through the grille aperture as we would have on the saloons. Now that opens up its own problems, which we'll come to later in the video. From the doors back, you have the extra wheelbase and the extra overhang on them as well, which gives the interior of a minivan quite a good load capacity, at least for its size. However, the 848cc engine, which did come in them standard, would have struggled on a full load, depending on who was using it. Now again, minivans were very popular, especially with the emergency services, with the police, with the AA, the RAC, even the Army, the RAF were even using them as well. So again, very popular small van. Then The estate models, which I'm sitting in here, were also introduced in 1960. Again, Austins and Morrises, but in difference to the minivans, these were actually of deluxe standard. So the most basic of the saloons was a deluxe. So more bright work, more chrome, and a little bit more interior trimmings as well. But again, we'll get onto all of this later in the video. The mini estate was based on the minivan, so same floor pan, same wheelbase, same overhang and so on, and even had the same barn doors on the rear. Now the reason for the barn doors was actually as space saving on the production line, that the two smaller doors actually took up less room on the production line and hence saving space. Then in 1961 the mini pickup arrived on the scene, again based on the minivan floor pan. Obviously only had the two-seat cockpit, had the same front end treatment as the minivan with the pressed in grills, and again the same very basic trim levels. So production runs. The minivan continued until 1983, with the mini pickup continuing until 1982. The mini estate, unfortunately, continued in original Mark I, Mark II guise until 1969, when it was then replaced by the Clubman estate. Now the Clubman estate was essentially a Clubman front end with the wind-up windows and so on that the mini Clubman saloons received, with the same rear end treatment as the all-steel estates. And they continued until 1980, when then production of the estates then ended. So no long wheelbases, unfortunately, after the very early 80s. So again, that's a very, very basic insight into the minis. Like I'm saying, Jake is going to be concentrating on the saloons in his video, as I've said, and I'll be concentrating on the older models on the long wheelbases as well. If we think about servicing now, well, even though the Mini has quite a compact engine compartment and everything is quite tight in here, servicing is relatively easy. If we took about the front of the engine, if we remove the grille, we can access the oil filter, the distributor, and so on. We can get access to, well, dynamo or alternator bolts and fan belts. We can get access then under the bonnet straight into the plugs right at the very front. To the rear of the engine, obviously we have the carburetors, and then later we have the injections. But again, it's relatively easy to get at, although access for getting tools and so on towards the back of the engine is a little bit more complicated. But for the most part, servicing is quite easy. Now, I mentioned about removing the grille. Now, this is where the vans and the pickups become a little bit of a problem child. With the fixed grills in the commercial models, because it's actually welded section into the front panel, we can't remove this out. So trying to get access to the oil filter and to the distributor can be quite tricky. So you will find a lot of mini vans, mini pickups actually have had the front panel removed and replaced with a saloon or a car front instead. Parts availability for the Mini is very good at the moment as well. Despite being an older car, there are so many mini spares companies available, large and small, and even through forums and so on you can pick up quite a lot of second-hand parts and original items. Although unfortunately some of the reproduction items can have issues with quality and so on, but for the servicing items, generally speaking, all that is very readily available, and aren't terribly expensive either. So yeah, generally running of a Mini is quite an economical venture, and would highly recommend it. Unfortunately, yes. Depending on the age of the Mini and how they've been stored and looked after can depend on how rusty that they actually are. The youngest Mini is now 20 years old, and yeah, again, so they are becoming quite an old car. The earliest Minis are 60 years old, plus actually now. So first of all, we look at the front of the car. There are a lot of external seams in the Minis, as you know, where the wings meet the A-panel and so on, even under the headlights and where the wing meets the scuttle panel. There's a lot of little seams and crevices and how they were produced. Now these unfortunately can cause dirt traps, which then can rot from the inside out. But for the most part, especially if you took at the front of the Mini, any proficient body shop, even somebody who's handy with a welder, there's nothing which is out of the ordinary in getting these fixed. And again, panels are readily available depending on your budget, whether you go for genuine heritage, even go for pattern panels. There's quite a range out there, but again, there's quite a range in quality as well. So if we look first of all at areas which are common rot areas for Minis, like I'm saying, under the headlights is quite common for Minis, where the wing meets the scuttle panel, at the seam, even under the windscreens as well, are quite common areas for rot. If staying at the front of the Mini, if we think of the front subframe, Minis can have a tendency to lose a little oil at times, which for the most part isn't a huge issue, but it does provide a little bit of protection to the front subframes. So generally speaking, front subframes don't rot away too much. Rear subframes, however, can have a tendency for rot, but again, replacements are readily available, and it's not a huge task to replace a rear subframe, even for the hobbyist at home as well. So again, there's plenty of guides and so on which are available to assist in that if needs be. We even think about the quality of steel as well. So obviously I have the older Mini here from 1964, so the older cars do tend to have a better quality of steel in their bodies. It seems to be quite a thicker grade, and with that comes a better quality, and in my opinion a much better body shell as well. So if we go to the later cars, especially the multi-point injection cars of the late 90s, they have used a much lower quality and cheaper, thinner steel, and they do tend to rot out quite quickly. And in some areas you may find that they're rotting in places you wouldn't even expect. I have seen later cars with tops of wings rotted out, even bonnets rotting out, even especially in the roof areas at the corners, at the guttering as well, which all are problem areas, especially on the later cars. So we've come around the back of the car now. So as I've mentioned earlier, there are areas at the rear of the car which are common across the entire production run of the Mini, such as the rear subframe. Like I said, it's an area which can capture a lot of dirt and so on, and then rot away. So specific to the long wheelbase editions, we have the added problem of having a low slung fuel tank which is underneath the floor. Again, that creates a lot of areas which can trap dirt and road debris and so on, which again can rot the fuel tanks, can rot out the floors above them, and even in the rear of the rear valance can capture a lot of dirt and then rot again as well. Rear wheel arches are common to all Minis, just areas which can capture dirt and road grime, can create areas of rot problems. But again, if the car is well looked after and these areas are all well washed out, it shouldn't be a major issue. Doors, whether it's the front doors or the rear doors, again, there are some areas which need attention, maybe underneath where the door seams are and so on. Just areas which can trap water. It's common on all cars of this era as well, so not specifically to the Mini. So you may have to get a car may need door skins, whether it's an external door hinge car like the earlier ones, or if it's an internal door hinge car from the early 70s on. But again, these are common issues to any classic car driving, so the Mini is no different. It's all depending on how well they're looked after, as I said. So the first thing I would say would be definitely go and join your local Mini club. There are so many clubs around the country. There's local clubs, even national ones, and there's always going to be members on there who either have a Mini to sell, will have a contact for somebody that they know selling one, even parts for whenever you do buy one, for upgrades, keeping your Mini going and so on. So definitely go and find your local Mini club. The next thing I would do, there are two national publications here in the UK. You have Mini World and Mini Magazine. In the back of both of those magazines there are classifieds, so again there will be plenty of Minis for sale in there. Even jump onto local websites, your Gumtrees and so on, eBay, and other car auction sites and classic car ad sites. So again, there are so many minis available. They built nearly 6 million minis, so there's always going to be plenty out there to sell. The unfortunate thing is the values of them. Mini values are starting to skyrocket this last few years, and trying to find a good one at a reasonable price is getting few and far between now. So even the basket case restorations are fetching some fairly high numbers now. I think that's across the board generally. Long wheelbase minis, I'm afraid, are getting more and more scarce. There's not so many of these were actually produced, so again, values of them are really going through the roof now as well. I was lucky, I have this car over 20 years, and when I found it, it was even through a friend. It was only about £150 I gave for the car at the time. I did see a Woody Traveller needing a full restoration, completely rotten car, and it was pushing up into the high thousands. So like I said, minis are getting quite expensive, but don't let that put you off. There are still bargains out there as well. You just need to find them. Maybe the older models, maybe if you're starting out in minis, maybe not the first ones to go for. Maybe go for the later 80s cars and so on in saloons, where there's more and more of them and more of them available. The prices aren't too bad yet, but yeah, if you are able to, definitely push for the older models if you can, as their values are just going to steadily increase every year. So that's my advice. Whether you modify your Mini or not is completely up to yourselves. Like, the world is completely your oyster as far as Minis are concerned. There are no two Minis the same, and every Mini is as individual as their owner. So some people have the wonder, is it modify versus originality? Which one is worth more? Yes, of course, a completely standard and restored car may be worth more than one which has been modified, because you're reducing the number of people who may be interested in it once you sell on. If you're not going to sell your Mini, feel free, just do whatever you want. It's completely bespoke and unique to yourself. I've modified my Traveller, because a Traveller is a rare enough car. I'm never going to sell this car. I've built it for myself. As long as you build the car for you, it doesn't matter. Haters are going to hate anyway. There's always going to be those who are originality is the only key. There's only way to go. If that's your prerogative, that's completely up to yourself. If you want to modify it, definitely go ahead and modify. Like I said, there are so many spares companies out there. There are so many companies offering modifications, whether it's mechanical, interior, wheels, wheel arches, even going with paint jobs. Completely, like I'm saying, completely up to yourself. So definitely, if you want to modify, go ahead. So you've decided to modify your Mini, and that's brilliant. But you're wondering what you can do. Well, there are so many things that you can do. There's engine modifications, interior modifications. There's so much you can do to the exterior of your Mini. Literally, the world is your oyster, and there are so many things available out there. Maybe there's the question of that you could have too many clashes going on, but if that's what you want, go ahead and do it. But yeah, so maybe we'll take a wee quick look around my own car here, show you a few options of things that you can do. And like I said, there's no wrong way of modifying your Mini. It's completely unique and completely up to yourself. So let's start under the bonnet. Now, this car had originally had an 848cc engine. Now that is long gone, and it's now been replaced with a 1293. Now that originated as a 1275 Cooper S with a plus 20 bore to it to give them the 1293s. Now it's now running there with the twin carburetors from the Cooper S as opposed to the single carburetor that it would have had. It also has some head work done to it, which is polished and ported. I'm running with an alternator conversion as opposed to dynamo, which the older cars would have had. It's been converted to negative earth as opposed to the positive earth that the very early cars would have had. So again, there's so much that can be done under the bonnet here. You can go turbocharged routes, supercharged routes. You can go overbores to 1380, 1430, so on. Twin cam conversions, even alternative engine conversions, Vauxhalls, Hondas, motorbikes, and so on. There's so much that can be done under the bonnet of a Mini, and definitely recommend it. Exhausts as well. There's so much available out there on the market. This is a Manoflow RC40, and specifically for the long wheelbase model. It's a slightly longer version than the ones available for the saloon. This gives a lovely little raspy note without being too loud, and adds a nice little bit of performance as well. Let's take a look at the exterior. There are so many modifications that you can do here as well. I've gone quite subtle with my modifications. I've actually gone with what's known as a cafe racer style. But again, there's wheel arches that you can do. There can quite wide wheel arches if you want to run a wide wheel. We'll come to wheels in a second. We can change the grills. I'm running here with a Cooper, Morris Cooper grill. This was the car's original grill. That's the standard pressed Mark 1 Morris grill. Beside it there is an Austin Ripley grill of a super type. Again, there's another Mark 1 Morris grill there. So again, there's so many grill conversions that are available. You can go Mark 2 grills, you can go Mark 3 grills, internal release, external release, and so on. Badging, again, there's so many badging available. I've gone with Cooper S, Morris Cooper S here. But again, there's so many things you can do in this way as well. I've changed out my headlights to Lucas P100 tripods. The indicators are actually from an Austin Healey. They're side lights from an Austin Healey. So again, there's items like that you can do. We go around the side here. I went with mirrors, bullet mirrors on a Speedwell style racing bracket. Again, there's so many types of mirrors available. Again, there too. We come around the back. I've added the reverse night spotlight. I've done some of my own work to the rear there, the overriders, which wouldn't have been standard on the long wheelbases as well. So exterior wise, there are so many things available. If you go onto Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, there's so many people out there converting minis that you can get so many ideas for as well. Now, I mentioned wheels. Now, originally this car would have come with a 3.5 inch by 10 steel with a full face hubcap. Now, I've ditched the hubcaps completely. I'm now running with a 4.5 inch Cooper S reverse wheel. 4.5 inch is about as wide as you can go on a Mini without having the need for wheel arches, as well as I want a nice clean look for my car. But again, there are so many wheels available out there. Whether you go 10 inch, which is the older versions, 12 for the sort of late 70s on, even the 13 inch wheels. Some people have even gone 14 on some. But again, there are so many different wheels available out there. Now, I said I go with the 10 inch wheels. I do have quite a variety that I do mix and match with sometimes. Some require wheel arches, some don't. We come down here. These are the wheels I originally had on the Traveller. They are a 3.5 inch Cooper S wheel. Cooper S always have the holes around the sides for ventilation for the disc brakes. Beside them we have a Cosmic Mini Light or Mini Light replica. We have 1275 GT Rust styles and quite a rare 4-spoke. It's a BWA as well. So there are only a small selection of wheels available, but again, there's so many things out there which you can draw from. Okay, so let's turn our attention to the interior. We'll just open the door, we'll pop in. Okay, so essentially the long wheelbase editions are exactly the same from the B posts forward. So floors, dashes, etc., all exactly the same between the long wheelbase editions and their short wheelbase editions. So if there's so many things that can be done with a Mini, whether it's long wheelbase, short wheelbase, there's so much available out there. So really anything that can be bought for a Mini saloon, we can put here in the front of the Traveller or a van or a pickup. But I'll just basically showcase what I've done. This is very basic of what you can do, but like I'm saying, there are so many things available out there that you can avail of. The first thing you can say about what I've done here is with the dash. So I've retained the car's 3-clock dash as original, although I now have fitted a Wolseley Hornet walnut dash surround. And as you can see there, if it focuses, I have a 130 mile per hour Cooper S Speedo. I've added to this some auxiliary gauges. Now, some of these aren't actually wired in yet. There'll be a video coming shortly showing that. What I can say though about this car is, as you can see with the switch gear, the wipers, the indicators and the horn, even the rocker switches in the dash rail, these are all from a slightly later Mini. These are actually all from a 1980s Mini. So the reason why I did that was, at the time I was still in school, Minis were still quite cheap, so I bought a full donor car, and that gave me a full wiring room for the Traveller as well. Again, this is an upgrade. I may change back to the original switchgear, but it's an option as well. Probably one of the biggest changes that I've done with the interior is actually with the gear selector. So as you can see, this is now mounted above the carpet. Now originally this car would have had what's known as a magic wand or pudding stirrer, which is a long gear shifter which went straight through the floor here, where this rod is going through, directly into the gearbox. Now I swapped the car over to a rod change, and due to having a larger exhaust in the car and with the rod change, there wasn't enough room for both under the floor, so I went with this. It's a CAD system. That's a Kent Automotive Design internal gear selector. So it's a quick ratio, and it's quite a slick gear change as well. So that was a lovely upgrade that I did. Again, other upgrades would be the walnut steering wheel. It's a Modellita replica that I've had adorned with the Cooper centre. On top of that, I've added the alloy lever handles. The door pulls are actually from a Morris Minor, and again, if you can see it there, that is a grab handle from a Morris 1800 Land Crab. Again, other upgrades, there's so many of these things available, like mirrors. I went with the chrome mirror as opposed to the originals. The black top dash rail, that's a Cooper S. Originally my car would have been body coloured across there. And I made these little switch panels. Again, these are for future if I put spotlights in the car as well. So let's talk seats now. Originally I would have had non-reclining seats which are fixed back. Mark 1 seats aren't renowned to be the most comfortable in the world. There are loads of options out there if you're upgrading the older cars. Recliners, microcells, low back buckets like I have here. Now these are Cobras, or else there's high back buckets. So many different things. You even see some other cars and so on. Now I went with these. I think they're in keeping with the period that I'm going with, the cafe racer style as well. I could have done some retrimming of original seats and so on as well. Now the rear seats, that is the original seat from the car, which I've had recovered in Cooper green and grey, as opposed to the original all green interior. Again, all of the door cards, quarter panel cards, boot cards and so on, they are all new from Newton Commercial. There's other interior companies out there as well. So again, I went with grey as opposed to the all green. But again, there's so many options available out there. You might even think about going down the motorsport route, going with roll cages and so on. Now this is where it comes a little bit more tricky for the long wheelbase editions as opposed to the saloon cars. There are very few off-the-shelf roll cages available for the long wheelbase cars. There's companies such as Roll Center, Owens Fabrications and so on, where you could get a bespoke one made. I have been told that a saloon one will fit. However, that's fine for the rear, although fronts are going to have to be extended and so on if you want to put a front cage in. Now I am going to look at putting in a roll cage into this car maybe at some point, just a bolt-in rear cage. So that's something I'm going to be exploring and deciding what is suitable for me on that one. But like I said, there are companies out there doing them for long wheelbases. There are a couple of racing estates. There's a Woody and a Clubman estate, which you may or may not have seen on the at Goodwood for the recent racing series there. And there's so many other motorsport upgrades that can be done. Okay, so we've come around the back of the Traveller now. So as you can see with the doors open, there's quite a good expanse of space in there. I have the rear seat, and it's currently in its upward position. Again, these seats fold down, they're very handy. There's a little lever on either side, here and here. Lift it, I'll do this one-handed. You lift the seat base, and then that folds down like so. So that does, as I said before, this gives you quite a good load carrying capacity as well. So essentially, it's a van there now as well. Incidentally, minivans did come with an optional rear seat conversion. If you can find one of those now, they're very rare to have, and it's a worthwhile upgrade if you're going to go down that route. Now you see here I've relocated my washer bottle to the rear. That initially would have been under the bonnet. For myself, it was more just to get a bit of space under the bonnet. With the telescopic dampers there and there, easy access to them. Maybe come up with some sort of a strut brace or something like that. Here I've gone with the wicker baskets. Now these were designed to go under the rear seat of the mini saloons, but the two of them fit nicely beside each other here in the boot as well. Now I had these little alloy filler pieces made by a friend of mine. So again, it was just a little bit of motorsport look about things there as well, which again just adds a little bit of cafe racer styling and a bit of individuality. Okay, so this takes us very nicely now to the very last thing which I have done to the interior of the Traveller. As you can see, Louis, our team dog, loves it in there. Hopefully we'll get to take him to some of the shows this year. So we're focusing here on the boot floor of the car. So what I've done was I added these little latches, stainless steel one on both sides. These are just an upgrade to the existing ones. They do come loose and they do start to rattle. And what I also added was an MGB door handle, interior door handle, which I've painted almond green, and that just allows me access as opposed to the hole which would normally be there. So excuse me, Louis. So this lifts up. Added a piano hinge along the rear of it, and added a bonnet stay just for an added benefit. If I did have to get access to my spare wheel, it'll stop it from falling on my head, which has happened on occasion. Like I said, the spare wheel is located in here. That's a 3.5 inch Cooper S wheel, an original Cooper S wheel, and it also gets me access to the electric SU fuel pump. Now, the fuel pump would normally be located in the subframe underneath the car, but as you know, that's going to get wet, it's going to get covered in dirt. So up here it's safe, it's clean, and it's not going to get damaged. I've also added a fuse box, so it has its own fuse, but that also gives me the option to add any more electrics to the rear if I feel I need to. Because here I do actually have some wiring into the rear, which takes me into here, which is the wiring for the reversing light. And another option I'm thinking of is adding some high-level brake lights. As being a Mini, it's a lot smaller car than everything else out on the roads, so maybe a little bit of extra safety there. So there you have my guide on buying a plastic Mini and modifying it. It would take hours to go through everything that you can do to a Mini, even hours long on just engine modifications. So again, this was a very, very quick review into what a classic Mini is, how you could buy one, and a few things that you can do to it. But yeah, if you want to buy a Mini, this is great. Hopefully I've been of help to you doing that. If you buy a Mini, keep it standard. Again, that's great. Even in standard form, Minis are so much fun. But modifying them just makes them a little bit more, you can just make it yours as well. So if you want to modify it, definitely go ahead and do it, like I'm saying. In the Mini community, there's such a great community out there. So many people who are willing to give help and guidance and just a little bit of assistance here and there as you go along. So yeah, it's brilliant to go out there and definitely join a club. Like I said, So yeah, hopefully you've enjoyed this video. I hope you had a great Christmas, and hopefully we'll see you again in the new year with some more videos. So see you on the next one.